In this episode, I have an interview with Chris Cox. He's a manager for a medical company in Germany. He's been there for 8 years, and I'm going to talk about his experience as an expat living in Germany, some of his tips. This is All-in-One Financial with Bill Holiday. We discuss financial planning issues of investing, taxes, estate planning, insurance, retirement planning, brought to you by AIO Financial, a fee-only fiduciary financial planning firm working with clients all over the U.S. and with expats all over the world at AIOfinancial.com. Our expat site is expatplanners.com. All right, thank you for joining me on this episode. Chris, in addition to being an interesting guy living in Germany from New York City, he originally was, or is, he's also my cousin, so I enjoyed catching up with him. Let's go to that interview.
I did have a business trip to India, and I learned from that a couple of years ago. It was actually when I was just starting with this company that you got to be really sure your visa to India is perfect. And I found out the hard way how important this is. And I had a visa to India, but it was apparently far from perfect, but not so far from perfect that the people at the Hamburg airport that checked it saw any problem, nor the people, I think it was Amsterdam or something. But the folks in the Mumbai airport saw that it wasn't perfect. And so my first business trip to India, I didn't see more than the airport of Mumbai. And then I got
What was wrong with that?
It wasn't totally completed despite the Indian government sending me like a 4-page PDF with a barcode with my picture on it with all my information. Apparently that was not the completed visa, which is something was lost in the communication there, I guess. And then only later did the people at my work say, oh yeah, that's a headache. That's why we always use this visa service to do this for us. And I said, where was this a few weeks ago? Would have been nice to know before I was 40 hours in transit without proper sleep or a shower all the way to Hamburg, Germany to Amsterdam to Mumbai and back again. Anyway, so that's one thing I can say is visas are important.
A little background. Living in New York, you go to the Peace Corps, you were in Ivory Coast and got evacuated.
Yeah, that was the other time I got kicked out of a foreign country, but that was more due to the rebels than anything else.
And then you do Ghana, and then you do Germany right away? Or how long have you been there?
Then both Allison and I did, my wife Allison, we did our MBAs. So we went to Indiana University School of Business. So we came right back from the Peace Corps, West Africa, 2.5 years there to business school, or more specifically, Allison was admitted, did the applications from Africa and was admitted. And I said, oh, I'll work. I got a job in Indianapolis for a year and pretty quickly decided that the MBA program was a better plan. It was quite a good program that we liked a lot, and she liked it from the beginning. So I immediately applied and then started up. So then after I finished the MBA, 2 more years, then we moved to New Jersey. I started working then and more in the finance career. So before that, I had the engineering career and the other random twists and turns. And then out of the MBA, I got into a corporate finance job, did that in New Jersey for about 5 years. And then it was with that company that I moved to Hamburg, Germany. And then I've done a couple different things here.
Johnson & Johnson, right?
Yeah, it was Johnson & Johnson out of the MBA program, New Jersey. And then I moved with them, worked for them about 5 years in New Jersey, and then got an opportunity to come move to Hamburg, Germany, which I had no idea about, not a word of German and never been to Germany before. But I was interested in this job called being a plant controller. So being the financial controller for a factory. And they had a quite large factory just outside of Hamburg. And I said, oh, that sounds cool. And I said, oh, I don't speak German and have never been a factory controller before. And this was in their medical device group instead of the consumer products where I was working. And they said, oh, you'll be fine, go have fun. Or I guess they couldn't find anyone else to do it. Yeah. So they asked me to do it. And so I did that for 2 years here in Hamburg, and then kind of decided, okay, what's next? And Alice and I were both really happy here and said we'd like to stay here. But long story short, I joined a startup medical device company also in Hamburg and did that for 2 years in a similar type of role. And then the you have the startups that you can end up on a tropical island or something with all your stock options, and then probably 90% of the startups go the other way. And this was one of the startups that went the other way. So then I looked for another job, and then I joined a company that I'm with since then. Now, similar thing, a financial role with the company, responsible for controlling, and currently it's a cluster of 12 of our manufacturing plants. So 8 of them are in Europe. We have one outside of Istanbul in Turkey, one in Russia, and we have 2 in North America. So I have my day job is to try to figure out the finances and the strategy and all of those 12 factories for the company.
Oh, that sounds like a pretty good sized company. Are you traveling a lot?
Yeah, it's involved quite some travel. It's a Swedish company, and so they have their offices in Stockholm, but the main kind of the biggest company headquarter building is in Gothenburg, Sweden. So I've traveling there quite frequently, and then they have another office around the Munich area that also a lot of people I work with are there, so go there quite frequently. And then there's 12 factories to visit. So even if you only go to the 12 factories once or twice a year each one, plus these other 2 headquarters buildings and a few other things, next thing you know, it adds up to a good amount of travel up until 2-3 months ago when it became a lot of meetings along these lines. I'd sit at home and turn on the Zoom and the Skype and chat with everyone this way, which is, I mean, I'm lucky, right? A lot of people have suffered through this for significantly, and we're very busy with the company. What we make, the demand is, if anything, higher than before. So there's plenty of work to do, plus figuring out all the Corona aspects. So we just pretty much wake up at home and get coffee and start into a day of phone calls and emails and projects and everything else, and do that till dinner time and do it again. But it's nice to see the family more than usual.
Yeah, that's nice. How has it been dealing with the visas or working there legally? Was it helpful to have moved there with a company, or wasn't that a big deal?
I think it's a lot easier. I mean, I would definitely recommend to anyone that gets the opportunity one way or the other that, at least in my experience, moving to a new country has been very rewarding. But I think it's easier, certainly, if you can find a company that will help you do that. So for us, they did all the visa, they did all the relocation. I had originally hoped when I was working for Johnson Johnson in New Jersey that this would be kind of an expat assignment. So they would really take care of everything. And then they were also facing their own challenges at that time. And our kind of head of finance that I was working for told me, Chris, if you want to do that, that's good. But as we're having layoffs and all that, we can't just set you up with a fancy expat package. And I said, okay. And he said, there might be other ways to do it. You could look into a local package. And I have to say, at first, that was a little bit disappointing because I said, oh, I'd rather have, of course, all the perks and whatever. But now this is one of the best things for us in terms of how it's worked out, because if it had been an expat package, it would have been 2-3 years max and then back home. And we had our nice time in Europe and now back to normal life. And the reason that we can stay here indefinitely is because I did take a local assignment. So I got the same local contract as any German employee would. Because I was already working for the company, they were able to help me get set up with that. And then they helped some with the relocation, but after that, we're on our own. We have our apartment here in Hamburg. We pay the rent like anyone else would that's just living and working in Hamburg, Germany. And we get our salary from the company and pay our taxes and all that. But I would definitely recommend for anyone who's considering this, the expat deals are nice, certainly. But if you're thinking maybe long-term is good, then if you accept a local contract and you can work out the details, you could have the option, at least that we ended up with, maybe we're lucky, but you can stay. In our case, we have an indefinite ability to stay here and work, so more or less a green card.
Nice. And when you switch to like the startup or the new company you're with, was that difficult? I mean, did you do most of the things you needed to do yourself, or hire a service, or how tough or expensive was it?
I did it exactly the same as I would have done it in the US. I saw an interesting job posted online and sent in my resume or CV, and they gave me a call. I think probably one of the things that could have been difficult certainly would have been the language. So we tried to learn German, but it's not kind of fluent level. All my work's been in English the whole time I've been here. But I think so long as you're working for international companies, no matter where they are, they're almost always going to be working in English. And of course, they have people all over the globe. And so you all day long are basically working in an English environment. And because for both of the three, but the two companies I've applied to that I've worked for here have been international companies, I could just send in a CV in English, do a job interviews, a couple rounds, same way you would in Arizona or anywhere else, but it was all in English, and it was with an international team. I remember, I think the first interviews I had were with a couple of Germans, but also some Americans. Later, I had job interviews with a German and an Irish guy who became my boss. So it's just kind of random, but I think we're lucky as English speakers that you can go a lot of places, and it's kind of the language of business.
Oh, that's good to know. And your daughter, 6 years old, is she in German only, or what's she doing at school?
She's in a bilingual school. It's probably, you'd call it a charter school. So they have one German teacher, one English teacher. They try to do basically everything in both. So she's learning both languages quite well, I would say, and it works pretty well. So this is okay. I mean, our other choices, we could have just sent her to the local neighborhood school here, which would have been all in German. And we said with our situation, we'd probably be happy if she's in an environment with both. We didn't want to go the direction of it would be purely German education, because while we're very happy here, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. Maybe we live somewhere else someday, and of course she's going to be fluent in English from our household, but we don't want it to be that she can only kind of think and do schooling only in German. So we didn't want that option. And then there's also an international school here, a couple of them, and they follow this very international curriculum, but then this is 100% in English and would have been basically no German. And we thought that was a little too far the other way. So we found this one school, more or less charter school type of place, that has both. And we said that's the happy medium for us.
Oh, that sounds good. Oh, that's good. With taxes there, I know the tax rate in Germany is higher than US. Do you still have a rental in New York?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or New Jersey?
New Jersey, yeah.
Has that been difficult dealing with German US taxes, or is that something you can deal with yourself?
It's a little bit of a pain. I do it myself, partly because whenever I looked for help, it would seem it was going to cost a fortune. And I'm not really a tax expert, but I wasn't also that confident for all the money we'd be paying, how much better advice we'd be getting. Now I may,
Right.
I mean, we may, I also don't know what I don't know. So, I mean, 10 years from now, I could say, oh my gosh, I have a tax disaster. I hope it doesn't happen. But I recognize there's a place for good advice, certainly. But what happened actually is when I started with each of these new companies, we had Deloitte help us with the taxes in that year. And then it was kind of copy paste the next few years. And so I have to do, since that we have German income, we have to file German income taxes. So we do that. And then as Americans, regardless of where you live, they tax you on your global income. So we have to file the American as well. I have to say it's really the American ones that are a bigger headache than the German ones. The German one, even being all in German, and I'm not fluent in German, theirs is fewer forms, less information to fill. Probably 80 or 90% of what they need is sent directly on the W-2 equivalent from the employer to the tax office. So they basically already know like 80 or 90%. So you're just kind of filling in, I paid this in school fees, and oh, by the way, I have a rental in the US and it looks like this. But I probably spend 3/4 of the effort every year on the American one, on TurboTax, doing that. And then the German one is easier in comparison, but it does become a bit of a process to have to navigate both. And I would say it was a bit hard for me to try to find anyone who could necessarily, in our special situation, both Americans living permanently abroad, but with rentals in the US and the kid here and everything else. It's not your normal situation. So we couldn't immediately find anyone to help. So we said we'd just do it ourselves.
Figure it out. That's good. I mean, even with your work, I mean, you're kind of good with that, numbers and accounting, and I mean that doesn't sound like a big stretch.
Yeah, it's not too far away from my day job, so that helps at least.
Yeah.
I keep my fingers crossed I'm doing it right.
Right, right. Well, that's all anyone can do. You do the best you
Yeah,
can.
it'd probably be the same if I was paying a lot to another guy. I'd feel the same way, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. You could still have a surprise come up.
Yeah.
What's Allison's status? Can she work there? Can she?
She can work here. She has a, let's say, a permanent visa, but hers is related to mine. So if I was to end up, for example, losing my job for an extended period of time, then we could potentially have an issue. So fingers crossed that that doesn't happen. But I have this completely unlimited. But I think it's either this year or next year. She can basically give in an application, says, "Look, guys, I've been here this long, and I intend to stay here, and I'm married to this American guy who also has a permanent visa," and they'll transfer her. I guess she has sort of a temporary visa that needs to be renewed every several years. They'll switch this to being a permanent one for her as well. Like you said, so long as we don't get ourselves into any trouble, should be fine. But I mean, it's also easier for us than a lot of people. I mean, we're coming with the MBA background. I was working for a good company in the US, so obviously that really helps. I mean, you see on the, for example, the Facebook expat groups and all, you see a lot of people say, "I've just moved here and I'd like to teach English, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
also work out my visa situation and my personal situation." I mean, that can be quite tough, of course. And for some people, it doesn't work out, and you see they're in a tough situation. But for us, it was pretty easier, let's say, to come in the way that we came in.
That makes sense. Wait, and how many years have you been there?
8 years.
8 years, and always in Hamburg.
Always in Hamburg. Yep, yeah. We decided we
Okay.
liked it here, so we've stayed put. And the whole time we've been married, we've been here now longer in one place than anywhere else. Even all the places we
Right.
lived in the U.S. And we
Bouncing
got together
around.
in college, yeah, so 25 years ago. But we realized we now in this the apartment you can see behind me, the same apartment is where we lived longer than anywhere else now. So it's kind of become home. Although obviously we're also foreigners, so it's a little different, but we're quite comfortable here.
Any thoughts of buying a place there, or is that even an option?
Yeah, we would be allowed to. I keep looking because I think, like everyone, especially now working from home, I don't have a home office here. I'm in our bedroom right now. It'd be nice to have a home office and all that, but we're in a normal sized apartment in the city here, and it would be nice to have a bit more space. And the only thing preventing us really is the cost of buying are just sky high here, and the rent is 100% like regulated or rent protected. It's free market in the sense that if you're just walking in off the street and say, "Hey, I want to rent an apartment," they're free to charge whatever they want. But once you're in, and to me this makes sense, right? Once you're in with your family and all that, then there's a government indexed inflation rate that is all they're allowed to increase the rent. So it's the same as the way it works in like Manhattan in a rent control. That was the term, but in a rent controlled building. So we've had, I don't know, 0.8% annual rent increase or something for 8 years. And meanwhile, the Hamburg real estate market's exploded. So
Wow.
if we wanted to pick somewhere else and rent it, it would probably be 25% or more expensive than our current place. And if we wanted to buy something, I mean, of course, it gets cheaper if you get further out of the city. But in Hamburg, just to rent, let's say, or to buy a, say, 2 to 3 bedroom decent place, kind of where you'd like to be, you're talking about €1 million. Yeah. So with that, we're still in our same apartment.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize Hamburg's, is that a pretty big,
It,
busy and big city?
yeah, it's a metropolitan place. It's a little over 2 million. So after Berlin, it's the next biggest city. It's a little bigger than Munich. So I think a lot of Americans think about Berlin, which is a big city. Berlin's some, I don't know, 8 million or something. It's quite a big place. Munich's, I think, 2 million or a little less, so a little bit smaller than Hamburg. And then Frankfurt, that people know of from the airport and the banking, Frankfurt, I think, is less than a million. It's a much smaller place. So Hamburg's big, it's cosmopolitan. The economy is very, very strong here. People are doing well, outside of Corona, of course. But even with that, I think that it's not so dire. I mean, you've probably heard Germany's navigated Corona about as well as you can. The rates are really declining of any infections and death here in the city anyway, which is great. Things are starting to open up. We're just back from a playground and cafe, and a couple weeks ago, those were closed. The indoor seating at the cafe was still closed, but it's a pretty nice day. So The kids played in the playground, all keeping 2 meters apart, but they're allowed to play anyway there, which is nice, obviously. And then we went to a cafe and sat outside and met some friends there and stayed a couple meters away from them, but got to talk to them. So it was quite nicer than it was a few months ago where you couldn't do all that anyway.
Yeah, that's nice. So I have heard Germany's doing well with this crisis. How do you feel about healthcare in general there?
Very good, I would say. Yeah, it's good. And it's not good, let's say, only because we're in a relatively fortunate position, with let's say, a corporate job and all that. But we have literally, when we came here, since I took a local contract, it wasn't like a fancy expat American-based insurance. It was local German insurance. And they asked me, what kind of health insurance do you want? And I said, okay, well, I don't know. What are the options? And basically everyone said, well, there's the normal public insurance that you can take that's actually run by private companies, but it's somehow they work with the government. And so there's public insurance, but you can buy it, let's say, through different providers, And everyone said, oh, this one is good. And I said, okay, I'll try that. And then only later found out, and this is the one we still have. I mean, to me, this is absolutely fantastic healthcare for a reasonable price. And if we had any blue collar job, or if you're doing almost anything, you could have this exact same insurance here and the same benefits as us. And to me, it's totally fine. And our daughter was born here. So we went through the whole birth, the hospital. We were in the hospital for 6 days because they just want to make sure everything is perfect, and this was just with totally regular public insurance. And even like when our daughter was born, it normally would have been free, totally, that you don't even pay €1. As it was, we paid €360. So the €360 is because we stayed there 6 nights, and we ended up getting a family room because they had one available, so I could also stay with my wife and then our daughter. And then they were also giving all of us, including me, 3 meals a day that they were delivering to the room. So the $60, if I hadn't been there and stayed with them, and if it's just been my wife and daughter, it would have been free. But we paid $60 for each of 6 nights with 3 meals a day, and that I could stay in the room with them and have a family room. So yeah, the health insurance is very, very good. Certainly no complaints about that.
About how much do you pay for the insurance? Is it?
It's a good question, I would say. It similar to the US, it also goes out in between the gross to net with the taxes and everything else. So I couldn't give you a fair number. Yeah, it's also similar to in the US that it's you would have a gross paycheck of this amount, and then you see all the deductions and the money disappearing, and next thing you know, you get the remainder. But it's included in that about 40% that disappears between your health insurance and your taxes to the government and your old age insurance and your unemployment insurance would be the term. So you have all these deductions going out, of which it's one, and then you end up with maybe keeping about 60 cents on the euro here. But you certainly, like with the health insurance, you get a lot for what you pay for.
Will you be part of like a Social Security, old age pension program in Germany?
Yeah. Because I have a local contract and I'm a German employee, and I've been here now and working here more than 5 years. So before 5 years, you can basically request a refund. You say, hey, I paid into all this, but I was only here temporarily, so now I'm out, and give me my money back and I'm going to go home. But now that we're here more than 8 years, we're invested in the German pension system. So I guess someday when we're old, we'll get a check from the Social Security Administration in the US for what we worked there, and one from the German government. And this is one where it might hurt us a bit, because the more of our kind of core earning years that we're spending in Germany, on one hand, it's very secure and stable, but on the other hand, the Germans are very fiscally conservative or pessimistic, however you want to say it. So, they are not putting this in the stock market, for better or worse. They're putting this in government bonds or something, paying even now, probably, I'll be pleasantly surprised if it's paying a positive interest rate, the type of stuff they're investing at in the current environment. So it might be negative. But no, they're investing probably some 1% Hamburg municipal bonds or something. And so it's not going to grow like the same money would in the US. And of course, you have the less risk. But, and in general, I think obviously with your retirement, it makes sense to be risk averse, but you can also be too risk averse, right? And you don't want to put all your retirement fund, and now I'm getting obviously into your territory, but you don't want to put that in a savings account with a 0.5% interest or something and hope it builds up and compounds to something you can retire on someday. And I think the German system's a little bit like that, a little bit painfully conservative, I would say.
Yeah. A question about cost of living. So, I mean, cost of living in New York. I mean, it sounds
Yeah.
like Hamburg's expensive, but it doesn't sound out of line with New York. Are
Yeah,
salaries similar? Are cost of living? I don't know. How is
I think
that?
the cost of living is similar to New York, I would say. It's not really, I wouldn't say Manhattan prices, but maybe suburban New Jersey where we were, or I don't know, Massachusetts, or I don't know exactly how it is in Arizona, but I don't think it's too different. Maybe Phoenix could be, or Tucson might be in the similar ballpark. So it didn't strike us as very expensive when we moved here, but it didn't strike us as very cheap either. I mean, if you're going to go to a decent restaurant and sit down at not a fast food place, but a proper restaurant, probably 20 euros for an entree and €5 for a glass of wine, or €4 for a beer or something. The beer's pretty cheap, which is nice. But the and the wine actually it helps a lot with the cost of living. My favorite bottle of wine that you get at the supermarket here is €5. So you can get,
Nice.
and it probably folks know, but the euro and the dollar are not too different now. So it's about $1.10 to the euro or thereabouts. So a euro is almost the same thing as a dollar. So it's like kind of like a $5 bottle of wine, which you can find in the supermarket, and good ones. So that's nice. But then you have stuff like buying an apartment. I wouldn't have expected it to be €1,000,000. And so we're kind of stuck in our existing apartment because we don't want to part with €1,000,000 in the current environment, obviously. Nor do we have €1,000,000 to part with. So here we are. But I think a lot of things are pretty similar cost. Maybe the other thing that is a bit different in cost that we enjoy is there's a lot of sort of activities and fun things to do that are either cheap or really inexpensive. So a lot of kind of summer festival and events and beautiful parks here that of course are all free, but people spend a lot of time in. And so there's a lot of nice kind of fun family things you can find to do here that aren't going to cost a lot. A couple of years ago, we found an amusement park outside of Hamburg that we like going to, and they offer a season pass. You can go there all summer long, one person, for €40. So this is probably half of what you'd pay Six Flags or something for one day. They're offering you can go there the whole season. So there's things like that we've enjoyed, and up until recently we've also been flying quite a bit through Europe. A lot of Americans say, "Oh, you're in Europe, do you take the trains around?" Which probably would be more environmentally friendly. So I'm semi-ashamed to say, but to explore Europe before a few months ago, of course, we were flying pretty much all over the place. We were flying a lot to go to the different places we wanted to go. And between, EasyJet and Ryanair and Eurowings, I mean, most of the time we were paying under €100 per person round trip to go to Paris or Amsterdam or Rome or whichever nice place we wanted to go visit. So that was also really nice. It might be different when life gets back to normal, if it gets back to normal. But up till now, we had been enjoying seeing Europe, and it was a lot more affordable than a lot of flights can be in the US sometimes.
Sure. And what you take that over trains just for time to save times if you had
Yeah.
a 3-day weekend or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's what especially before our daughter was born, we were doing a lot of going away for long weekends, and it was to save time. It was also because Hamburg is just not the best train connected location in Europe. I think, for example, Paris, and their train system is better. The French train system is better than the German one. So, I mean, they have seriously high speed, over 300 kilometers an hour type of trains that'll whisk you almost anywhere in France you want to go in a few hours. The trains are really amazing. Germany has a bit more outdated, slower, and not as good of a train network, let's say, for whatever reason. So we're not very well train connected. Like Amsterdam, for example, is not that far from here. I don't know, it's something 200-300 miles probably. So it's not that distant, but I think we have to take like 3 different trains to get there. So given the choice of that, we end up flying.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's great to take advantage of being there and seeing a lot of cool stuff. How about just any surprises or any advantages, disadvantages you found, or tips for people who are thinking about this?
The things that I guess that surprised or that we liked or didn't, I think it was more similar once you get used to it, right? Like the first 6 months, you feel like a fish out of water. You say, are we going to survive here? And maybe we should go home. And it's exciting to be here, but I don't know how long I could take this. So I think you kind of get over your learning curve, which is also exciting, right? So that's one of the good parts. And then at least coming from New Jersey to Hamburg, it felt pretty similar. I think if we were coming from a very rural spot in the US to Hamburg, it would have felt different. And if we were coming from Manhattan to rural Germany, it would have felt different too, but coming from a kind of pretty metropolitan city area to another one, it wasn't that different. And Hamburg's a pretty international city. You hear mostly German on the streets, obviously, but you hear English, and I've been noticing it seems like at least a lot of Spanish these days, and occasionally, Italian, whatever other language you hear. So it feels quite international, I would say. I remember at the beginning, one of the things that surprised me, the pizza did not compare to New York and New Jersey. So the food is a bit different, but Hamburg's a fishing town, so then you can also find some good fish, and you get used to that. But occasionally we miss the pizza. We've really, I mean, it's not surprising, I guess, but I'd say we've still enjoyed just seeing Europe and all there is to offer here. Another pleasant surprise, I would just say, is the quality of life. I think that's the thing that we really like the best, is that and it's funny in a way because Germans consider Germany very stressful and high paced, and it's not to say it's not, right? It's not just everyone relaxing all the time. And I think it's kind of work hard, play hard. People like to work hard, but they really like to enjoy their life. And I think this is probably more European than specific to Germany, but certainly we feel it here as compared to the US. The stress is really just an absolute another level lower. And I know when I was thinking about working back in New Jersey, I think people's focus would be on, working hard and driving and pushing and getting the next promotion. This would sort of be a typical environment, I guess, for people to work in, or at least it felt that way to me in the US. And here I feel like the more typical is kind of work hard, get done around 5:30, you put in your time, go home, enjoy the evening. Generally, nobody's going to bring home the laptop. Nobody's going to say, I'm going to log in after the kids are asleep and finish the report. And they're going to, come in and work hard, and with probably a lot less gossip and chit chat than you would have in your normal US office. Just sit and work seriously, and then they'll drop it and go home and enjoy family, friends, whatever. And similar vacation. So people work hard, and then they'll say, I'm off to Thailand for 3-4 weeks on the beach or something like that in the summer. And American might say, oh, you bring the laptop and you're going to call into meetings and whatever else. And a German would look at you like you have three heads if you asked if he's going to bring his laptop to Thailand and call into work meetings or something. I've actually had Germans like, first of all, look at you if someone would say that, or even imply like it's the craziest thing they've ever heard. And then they'll also remind you, like, technically I think it's not even legal, or legal's not strong, but it's certainly against HR policies and all that to do such a thing while you're on vacation. So vacations are viewed as very important. And I remember a time where someone was asking, like, why don't Americans take vacation? Don't they like vacation? And I said, oh, well, everyone likes vacation. They say, oh, but I read the statistic that Americans don't even take the vacation they're offered. And I said, what sense does that make? And they said stuff like, I don't get my paycheck from the German company and just give them some money back or something. Like, why would you ever do that? And I kind of said, I don't know. We agreed it doesn't really make sense, but there is a different level of stress. You don't have the sense here. I mean, of course, you can have layoffs and people can lose their jobs, but if that happens here, because you're kind of automatically unionized basically as an employee here, and it's called a little bit different and it works a little bit differently, but more or less everyone's a union employee. So if there's layoffs at a company and people are going to lose their job, which can happen here like anywhere else, I mean, it is a capitalistic system, that's going to come with negotiations and worker protections, a lot of back and forth, and ultimately a check for the person that's losing their job, and not a 2 weeks notice type of check like you might get in US, but a much bigger check. So I think all of this leads to just a lower level of stress where people are really, I think, focused on family, focused on kind of traveling. Germans are known to travel everywhere, so they take advantage, and kind of a good quality of life. And these are the things that we've enjoyed despite missing pizza and other good things about the US. I'll say maybe, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just the other thing that comes to mind is, I mean, we kind of have this ongoing debate about, everyone says, well, Germans aren't the most friendly. And then we also kind of feel a bit, we like living here and have German friends and all that. So you also want to say, well, at this point living here, I would say it's not so much that they're unfriendly, but they're a little bit more indifferent, especially to people on the street. I mean, it's different when you have close friends, of course, and you get to know people. But if you're just on the street, you're kind of anonymous and you don't get the same. And I do miss this about the US, just before anyone would get the impression it's only positive one way or the other. I mean, I miss the kind of small town, hey, how you doing? And how's the weather? And did you see the game last night? And small talk and just kind of being friendly to people I miss that a bit because it's not entirely the same here. But after a while, I noticed it's not exactly not being friendly, but it's more being quite cool to strangers, I would say. So for better or worse, if you're on the subway equivalent, the metro, I mean, nobody's going to come up and talk to you, and it's going to be silent, basically, even in the train. So I think it's very different than New York City, and people are going to be quietly reading and doing their own thing. And it's nice if you want kind of peace and quiet. It's nice the way it's nice in a library sometimes when it's quiet. But every now and then it'll be kind of fun to have a bit more kind of joyful enthusiasm and friendliness. So that's one of the ones that I do miss sometimes about the US.
Oh, that's interesting. How about sport? Have you gotten into soccer at all? Are you,
Less than I thought. That's another thing everyone asks from the US. Oh, it's Europe, it's soccer. Are you huge into it? We were getting into it was New York Red Bulls, but they played in New Jersey, not so far from our house. We were going to those games all the time in the summers in New Jersey. And we were really enjoying that and saying this is nicer for us and cheaper and easier to get to than, for example, a Yankees game or an NFL game or something. So this is what we started. Oh, hi, Mary.
Hi.
That's my daughter, Millie. You want to say hi?
Hi.
That's my cousin, Bill.
How are you doing?
He wants to know about Hamburg, Germany. You want to tell him something about it? Do you like it here? You were born here, so hopefully you like it. What do you like about it?
The food?
How do you like the food?
Good.
Good. What's your favorite food?
Noodles.
Noodles. So
Nice.
pasta, he means. What about the sausages? Those are pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of sausage. We had sausage just the other day at the park. That was fun, right? Yeah, they had a little cafe selling sausages to the kids playing in the park, and that was very nice, huh?
Sounds
And now
like a
you
good
get
treat.
ice cream. That was pretty good, huh? They have lots of
have
it.
ice cream.
You do. Oh, we went to the ice cream place. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. We went to They have ice cream places everywhere here. It's not just for when it's hot out, right?
Mm-mm.
No, you can have ice cream really anytime, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else you want to tell Bill about Germany?
Well, you're pretty lucky being there. What a cool experience.
Yeah. Is it cool? Yeah.
You gotta pick up another language.
Yeah. You pick up another language, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll see you later, huh?
How cute.
Yeah. There's a little troublemaker. So now I have no idea what we were saying.
No, I've struggled with that with trying to work. I actually am in Sylvia's, my mother's home office, just because I couldn't work at home. It's tough. There's just a lot of distractions.
Yeah, I've had a lot of colleagues say that too, of course, in these last few months, but I'm lucky we made it work. I mean, a lot of our friends have two kids that have been, I know it's the same way in the US and everywhere, but let's say two kids home from school and two parents trying to work from home. This is really, really hard,
Yeah.
obviously. So we have it a bit easier. One kid home from school and only one person working. So we've been able to manage for the most part, I would say. Everyone's tolerating everyone so far, and it has been a lot more family time. So it's been nice, actually. Or nice is the wrong way, because obviously a lot of people have suffered, but we made the best of it, and we've been fortunate through it, I would say.
Yeah, that's good. And the language, I know you said you didn't go there knowing any, but you're kind of picking it up informally, or are you taking classes and trying to crank through it?
Yeah, most of the time I've been here, I've had some kind of language course, maybe once a week or something, which isn't really enough, obviously, to learn, but at least you get something and have a teacher to help you. So I had that at the beginning, and then I've done it kind of off and on. What really helped me the most is the middle job I've had here for 2 years was fairly heavily German speaking, and so that helped a lot. It wasn't 100%. It was kind of, let's say, a German subsidiary of an American-owned company. So with the 6-hour time difference to the East Coast, we were actually doing a lot all in German, or almost all in German in the mornings. And then the conference calls with the US parents company would start up when they came online, and then we kind of switched to English. So that really helped. And then the last 4 years now, I've been in jobs where it's really 100% English and nothing else. And I've seen the German go back down again and realize, except for ordering a beer at a restaurant or a coffee or a croissant or something, that's pretty much the extent of my German for a week. So it's not really great, but I'd also say it would be hard the other way, right? If you moved to Germany without any language experience, if you really had to be fluent, that would be very, very tough to manage. And it's not probably the hardest language to learn, but I'd say it's not the easiest either. It's the grammar is very tough. So you can understand other people, I think, fairly easily, because like they don't speak so fast as, for example, in Spanish or something. And the pronunciation is a lot of it is not that different than English. So I think you can kind of understand and be understood. But I think I could be here, I'm sure, the rest of my life or for decades. And within one sentence that I would say anything, the native German speaker would know that I'm a foreign speaker, not partly from the accent, of course, but even more from it's very tricky with the grammar rules, and they'll just hear you almost instantly make a grammar mistake. And what they do in Hamburg, since it's very cosmopolitan, then they immediately switch to English and want to speak to you in English. And then you say, oh, there goes my opportunity to speak German again. And you can try, but then I'm there with a more caveman level of German, and they're there with virtually perfect English saying, good that you're a native English speaker. I have a question I've been wanting to ask that I want to improve my English. Here's a sentence. I'm wondering if I should use the word who or the word whom in the sentence, Yeah. So this is the level of questions that are coming the other way. And I'm sure I just sound like a caveman to the Germans, unfortunately. But I try to do something. I mean, I don't want to be the type of person that's lived here this long and hasn't done anything. And I'm also, for better or worse, not the person that's made it the first priority. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I have some kind of intermediate level of German at this point, but it's on the priority list, but it's not at the very, very top.
Yeah, no, with the young kid, I mean, you only have so much time in the day, but that's a nice project. I mean, I like that. Chipping away at learning a little more of language is nice.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy it too. It's a nice thing to do. And now I had been doing also once a week at work, and that's nice. I had an instructor come in there, and I had a couple of colleagues who we were taking the course together because we're at the similar intermediate level. So we would all just speak German for an hour and a half. So that was nice. And I kind of missed that the last 3 months being home. So I'm just kind of playing around on Duolingo on my phone or something, which is better than nothing, but it's a far cry from an hour and a half speaking the language with a few other people on your level and a native speaker who's an instructor. So I hope we get back to that, but who knows when and what the future looks like. But someday at least we'd want to get back to it. And maybe actually if this continues, I mean, we could do language courses this way, right? With Skype and Zoom and all. So maybe we look into that if this is going to continue for longer. But it seems that around here, at least it's opening up. So I do expect to be back in the office more often than not. And then some, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 or 3 months from now, but at some point in the future, that's what I expect. So we'll see.
Yeah, I imagine too. No, in language too, it's a nice way to get to know other people. I mean, in addition to your language. That's cool. Yeah. Anything else you want to throw in for the podcast?
Yeah, I said it a bit at the beginning. It's just the only other thing I wanted to say is just to encourage anyone, even though, it's not always easy, but anyone who's interested in going abroad, I would recommend it. It has its challenges, but for me, and I know my wife feels the same way, it's been very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. And one of the things that we thought when we were given this opportunity to move to Germany, and it was sight unseen, and we didn't know, and we said to ourselves, what's the worst that can happen? Well, worst comes to worst, you move back, right? And you go back to what you were doing before. And what we really didn't want to have was to one day be sitting together in the nursing home saying, we wish we had done that, wish we'd moved abroad, wish we'd taken a big step or seen Europe or whatever it is for different people. And that was one of the things that just pushed us to do it. So if anyone is, listening and hears that, that's the strongest recommendation that I can make. And then you see what happens, right? It may or may not work out, but it's great to give it a try.
Yeah.
The one thing I would want to send out to everyone who might listen.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. That's great. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Thank you for listening to AIO Financial, or All-in-One Financial, and spending part of your day. I really appreciate it. When we stopped recording, Chris did mention that one of the downsides of being so far from home is being so far from home or missing family. And they usually head to the US 1 or 2 times a year. Now, because of the coronavirus, they're even more isolated and unable to travel. And so that is a drawback that you want to be aware of for sure. But there were a lot of positives, and he's definitely an advocate for having an experience like this. This has been brought to you by AIO Financial. If you need help with any part of your finances, please contact AIO Financial for a free meeting, aiofinancial.com. We have a free ebook about financial issues for expats, and that's at expatplanners.com/expat ebook. We appreciate any comments, questions that you have for us. You can comment where you find this. You can contact us. There's contact information on our website, aiofinancial.com. If you like these videos, please subscribe to our channel and give a rating. If you like our podcast, please subscribe, leave a comment, give a rating. We really appreciate it. It'll make it easier for other people to find independent, fiduciary, fee-only investment information. Okay, take care. Thanks a lot. Stay safe.